even the leaders that I love going like, "Ooh, I saw Maxence do this thing. I want to try it." You can hear the Wilhelm scream coming.
Yeah. Hearing somebody say, "Oh, I saw Maxence do this thing and I want to try it," is always very concerning for me.
It's quite terrifying. All right. Hello and welcome to another zany episode of Nerdy West Coast Swing, the podcast with pixels where the anchors are out of this world and the points don't matter. We are here to help train your eye so you can learn faster and dance better. I'm Cassie Winter.
I'm Alicia Marshall. If you're wondering who are we to be analyzing these pros, Cassie and I both have extensive training and experience in both partnered and solo dancing. Cassie has about 23 years and I have about 25. So tonight we are taking a look at Virginie and Maxence, and we are talking about...
So basically how to position yourself and connect well so that your partner can feel your weight, where your weight is, and when you're changing your weight. So this is going to be a very connection-oriented episode, but particularly how you can create connection effectively, depending on which role you're in, using your weight.
Yep. I think we have a little bit of a preamble, right?
Yeah. So I just want to share some basic math, because when you're a solo dancer, committing your weight to something, you're only dependent on yourself. You're not affecting another person. But in a partner dance, especially like West Coast Swing, where we use the physics of tension and compression and transitioning back and forth between those two things all the time, committing your weight to something, you have to also consider, is this something that my partner needs to feel? And if so, when and why? And that will help dictate what you're trying to do with your own body. So committing weight in West Coast Swing is kind of like a sum of tension or compression, plus your own body weight, where it is over your foot, and the direction and speed at which your weight is moving across the floor. It's not as simple as I'm standing on this foot, therefore I'm weighted on this foot. Like, yes, grounding is an element in this, but committing your weight is more complicated and nuanced.
Mm-hmm. And it also has to do some with just like the positioning in terms of like, if you are actively styling something, having different shaping and whatnot to what you're doing kind of adds another whole element to things. So like if you are not just doing like a basic anchor, basic redirect type thing, it has to do with balancing things in a way that you're able to get the right shaping, but also be connected and give some semblance of like where your weight is at. Because if you're shaping, it's not going to always be the same idea of having your weight over a foot, having the weight going one way and having it like directed that way. There's also some extra things in it because then you have body parts going different ways when you're shaping. So you're not all moving back. The direction is not fully backwards. There's extra things going on. So when I'm saying shaping, I'm like, like if you're wanting to create angles in your body or whatever. So in those moments, positioning is also important because you have to take into account the extra like directions that your body is going in terms of giving the weight in the right direction or like signaling to your partner where you want them to know that you're at. Because it's not always necessarily, if you're shaping, where you want them to know that your weight is, it's not necessarily where your weight will naturally go.
Right. And tonight we're analyzing a recent dance between whoa. my brain just tried to put together Maxence and Maxime.
I figured.
Yeah. Maxence Martin and Virginie Grondin. That's who we're talking about tonight. Again, I can't decide if I'm an English accent or a French accent, so I'm awkwardly somewhere in between, and I apologize to all parties. But they do such dynamic shaping in their dance that unless you know what to look for for example, you may see Maxence physically going this way, but he's actually indicating for Virginie to be going in the opposite direction. And so we're going to be highlighting those nuances tonight. You ready for me to share the link, or is there more you want?
One more thing. So in terms of Virginie for follows, we have been watching a lot of the Advanced All-Star events this year, and we see a lot of influence from Virginie, which is great. I love her styling choices and whatnot. But there's a certain way that she goes about things. Like, she really, because of the styling choices that she makes, she really has to almost overcompensate in order to make sure she's still having effective technique to communicate to Maxence. So we've been seeing the influence of Virginie, and yet also not quite enough of it, because we've been seeing some of the ideas that she puts into her dancing, which, once again, lovely, love her choices, but without the actual extra technique in order to like adjust, it changes things. It makes things really ineffective. It makes you disconnect from your partner, and then we don't know what's happening. So
right. And similarly with Maxence, because I know like ever since I started many years ago in West Coast Swing, so many leaders have looked up to Maxence because of how unique his styling is and his pattern choices are. And I think what I've seen a lot over the years is people trying to mimic the cool look without understanding that so much of what Maxence chooses to do is based in the functionality of the connection. And so hopefully we're going to unlock some of that for all of you tonight.
cool.
All right, link is in the chat. Go ahead and give it a watch, and when you're done, we will get to analyzing. To the screen share. Okay, no conversation about committing weight in West Coast Swing would be complete if we didn't talk about basic starter steps.
Yes.
Because really the first moment in a dance where you know, oh, I can connect with this person, or oh no, I can't connect with this person, is often that like you're in close position and you're in theory trying to shift weight from side to side in tandem with your partner. Yeah. And often leaders don't actually direct their follow. They just kind of are like wiggle. There's a lot of wiggling instead of actually committing weight. So I'm going to hold forward on this. And I just want you all to pay attention to how much they're moving side to side. So even though we're facing the side of them and we're not at the end of the slot and we can't see how much lateral motion is going on, you can still tell, particularly from Maxence, how much he is shifting from side to side. He's shifting enough to pick up his free foot off the floor. And for the first few, he actually picks up his free foot and taps it closer to his standing foot.
Yeah.
And that's indicative of he's actually moving his center from foot to foot. And then I'm going to not do a whole hour on this, so I'm just going to do a real quick thing. But it's really important to pay attention to your follows stance when you're in that close position, because if your follows feet are really close together, their center doesn't have to go very far to get over that foot, to get over each foot in transition from one to the other. If a follow's feet are a wider stance, and that could be for many different reasons. Like me, I'm just a larger person, so I have a wider stance when I'm standing. That means that their center to actually free up their non-standing foot has to travel farther. And often the reason why a starter step feels awful is one of you is here and another one of you is here. And that problem can be independent of role. You could have a leader with the wide stance and a follow with a narrow stance, and then the follow feels like they're going to fall off their feet because the leader is traveling too far. Or you can have it the other way where the leader is either doing the wiggle or has this narrow stance, whereas the follow has a wider stance and has no idea any weight transfer is happening at all. So the easiest thing you can do as a leader, because it's your job, I would say, to be the first person to fix this. And then as a follow, it's your job to notice, oh, they're not fixing it, so I'll fix it. But it should be the leader's job first, is to just notice the stance of your follow in closed position and shift their center from foot to foot enough that they're actually doing full weight transfers from foot to foot before you lead your first triple step.
Mm-hmm.
Soapbox over.
The amount of times that I have just like been left in one spot and then suddenly yeeted one way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I usually get.
Yep.
No warning ahead of time.
It is bad.
And then I trip over my own feet, which I've said before, and it's so much fun. I love feeling clumsy.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who does that. Because like no matter how fast you can like ghost your weight transfers underneath you to compensate, some of those leaders are just super sneaky and death ensues.
It's always gonna kind of trip over yourself a little bit. That's how it is, unfortunately.
All right. So I think that's enough on that topic.
Yeah.
one note down, 5,000 to go. This one's yours.
Yeah. So this one I wanted to just mention quickly because we talk a lot about with good connection for follows, you don't want to see the hips moving way farther back than where the hand is at on the upper body. And that's what's happening here. But I wanted to mention that it's kind of irrelevant for this particular thing because she's kind of like becoming like a pendulum. And then when it's actually time for them to reconnect and go into the next move, you can see not only do her hips move back, but her upper body moves back away from Maxence as well.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we have this moment where she does clearly like disconnect the lower body, when it's time to move on, she moves everything and reconnects everything. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. So this is the one where she's disconnecting purposefully for aesthetic reasons. And then this one right here, you can see
she pushes away from him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And her upper body moves away first.
Yes. So I wanted to talk about this triple step right here. It's basically the equivalent of a 3 and 4 on a whip. And I want to talk about this foot placement and the weight transfer after it. So Maxence is not only rotating on his right foot, but he's extending his left foot out to his side and also slightly to the back. So it's not right here, it's back here a ways. And then after his left foot actually strikes down, he partially commits his weight to that foot, just enough to pick up his right foot, but he can't get very far. And the way he's compensating for not actually getting his whole torso directly over this foot is by rotating his upper body back to the right. You can see his right shoulder is in frame and his right shoulder disappears behind the rest of his body until he finishes turning to the right. So the most important part is how he is committing just enough of his weight over this foot in this direction to lead Virginie forward. But I feel like what a lot of people would see when they look at this is him going around her because they're not seeing his body get up over that foot. So what's happening is he's essentially like almost hanging off of her. And he is not only using his own feet to push himself partially back over that left foot and rotate his upper body, but he's actually, through the tension in his arm, depending on Virginie's grounding in order to counterbalance him. And the simplest thing to look at is just really paying attention to his right shoulder and how it really consistently moves in this direction.
Mhm.
And that is because of the way he's committing his weight.
Yeah, so here is the first kind of anchor we'll look at. Now, like I was saying earlier, she goes to many different lengths in order to create some effective technique here. And the main thing that you can see, it's very, very minor, but because you can see that she has this right shoulder forward initially, but she's at an angle to Maxence, right? So she's facing the audience with most of her body. And then that shoulder is forward partially because of that. But then you can see that she like ever so slightly kind of tucks the arm back and down to reconnect. And then as she's doing that, she's also lifting up that right leg. So she's kind of changing her pitch ever so slightly. And so the important part of this one is that she's making sure that her arm is really connected to the rest of her body. So for this, I like to think of having two sections of the body, so the right half and the left half, and really thinking of whichever arm is connected and the way that you want to anchor is just like pulling that back, not pulling, but making sure that that side of the body is kind of tucking back a little bit so that you're getting that tension and you're making sure that you're connecting the whole side of the body.
Yep. I just want to highlight if we're using this paneled wall behind them, and here I'll draw a line just like hovering above her shoulder. And then to this frame, her shoulder has traveled through space.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that you're talking about. It's one of the results of connecting that shoulder. If that shoulder weren't traveling through space, that would indicate that it's more likely that she would be disconnected.
And the other thing is you can see the elbow kind of rotate slightly so that it's more facing up with the inside of the elbow. Not totally up, but it's angled more upwards.
Yeah.
And that's what's kind of bringing everything in together.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. This is a great one from Maxence. He's committing his weight in one direction while intending to go in a different direction. So if we frame through this, it's clear that he's ending up moving screen right. But he's wanting to lead Virginie down the slot to his left. And it's a rock and go. So he's having to lead her to settle back onto her left foot behind herself. And then he's having to redirect that energy and to bring her left side forward and through. But the lead for that is actually happening earlier than we might think based on Virginie's footwork because she's syncopating and having fun with this situation. What's happening with Maxence's body is through this ronde right here. You can see how as he's swinging his leg straight back behind him and hooking behind, there's a lot of tension in his torso to counterbalance that. And his upper body is not traveling to the right, whereas his hips are already. He's even rotating his right shoulder back and to his right. You can see the shoulder has come towards us ever so slightly. And as he is stepping onto this foot, he's basically leaving his upper body as far behind the movement as possible. And then he's lifting the arm to help follow through on the lead. But the lead has already happened by, I'd say, this point right here. She already knows she's coming forward.
Yeah.
The other detail to add, like I was saying before, is that this is in part possible because Virginie is settling into the connection and he can depend on her to counterbalance himself. So this styling he does is in part a result of the connection that is right here. And it's not just something he's throwing on. It's very functional based on what's happening. It's not arbitrary. And then you wanted to talk about her large step. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we like used to see a lot with Virginie is her taking really large steps. And she's doing a very similar thing now, but it's a fake large step. So the problem with large steps is that typically that means you're reaching out too far away from you. So then you're going to fall forward and have too much momentum and get ahead of the lead. And so with this, what she does, you can see she actually places so she has her right foot coming free and she has it so it's like extending out all the way, like she's pointing it out in front of her. But then when she's actually taking a step, she's pulling it back in. And that's so she's not moving ahead of the lead. If she were to have her foot out that far and then just press onto that foot, she's going to be ahead of where he's leading her. So she needs to, this one in particular isn't like a huge adjustment. Some of them are a little bit bigger, but she's not taking that full large step that it looks like. It's more of just an illusion.
Mm-hmm. She's even ghosting her left foot further back after this syncopation. Mm-hmm. So she's placing her left foot down, hooks her right foot in front, puts enough weight on it to pick up her back foot and move it back so it's behind her. So it's almost like she set her up to automatically be mid-stride instead of getting to extend the leg way out ahead of her, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
It's so sneaky. And I think this is one of those things that you were alluding to at the beginning, how we see people trying to emulate Virginie, but without the technique to do so. So they would do this syncopation plus large step, but without that compensation part, depending on how much rope there is in the connection.
Exactly. So then they would be getting ahead of their lead.
All right. So looking at Maxence again, this is a really great example of him hitting his post a little early and hard and adjusting to compensate. So the post is the point in a pattern where you're starting to feel the tension. And basically, if in that moment you already feel too much tension, like it's enough to actually redirect your partner with, you need to back off a little bit. So in this rotated position where he's crossed in front with his left foot and he's rotated back to the left with his upper body and his left arm is really tucked into his side. When he stepped across into that, you can tell that Virginie already has a fairly extended arm. Like for her to be comfortable, he needs to make sure he doesn't extend her arm any further. And if he were to continue committing to this weight, it would yank her out of her positioning. So what he does instead is he kind of does a forward rock, replace hook, and then ronde back towards her. So that way he's not actually pulling that handhold any further down the slot in his direction. And that allows her to do a power pose, essentially. And then I think you had something you wanted to add. Yeah.
Basically about her power pose.
We don't coordinate with each other when we make these notes.
don't. It just so happens.
This is how the science works. If you know what you're looking for and you know the topic you're talking about, you're going to end up highlighting a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah,
You
pretty
don't
much.
make this stuff up.
Mhm. So I'm glad that you explained what Maxence is doing. So now Virginie's into things. She's getting into the split weight position, which, as we've talked about, is not the best position to be in for connection and for redirection. So, what she does in order to get out of it is super important. What you can see happening, right? So, you can see that she has her left foot forward and her right shoulders forward initially, right? And so she has the left shoulder draped back behind her. Now, what happens is she shifts her weight over to one side. So she's step replacing, and then she's pulling this right shoulder back again so that she is now changing her pitch. So she's starting out where she has a fairly neutral, almost forward pitch, basically. Once she kind of hits this power position, and then she's moving to her left. And as she's doing so, she's rolling that shoulder back and down. And as she's doing that with her right foot, she's bringing it back behind her and forward. Right. So all of that is sending the right side of the body back initially. And then she's bringing the foot, like she's kicking it out underneath her from that back position. And so now she's taking that kind of neutral position up over her feet, and she's taking it into a pitch back. And so that's the pitch that we want to be in as follows in order to follow.
Yep.
I don't know how else to say that.
Ain't the English language fun sometimes?
Mm-hmm.
This anchor right here is a masterclass in them adjusting to each other based on them hitting the end of their rope on the post count a little too hard and too fast based on what they're wanting to create musically with this more relaxed song. Because it is totally possible to rebound quickly out of a fast, hard post. Like that's a thing you can do in West Coast swing. But in this instance, that's not the choice they wanted to make. So they both adjusted accordingly. And they did it via dancing.
Yep.
As opposed to just like, whoops, back to a normal anchor. Which, is great for comedy, but save that for those moments.
Exactly. And then my next note is continuing from this. So she's changing her pitch, and that allows her to then again reach out in front of her without actually having to commit any weight. So we see again, she's kicking the foot out all the way, and then she is softening the leg and letting it drop underneath her. And she's not letting that weight commit and then move forward onto it. She's letting herself be brought on top of that foot. And all of these are just things in order to help her stay back so that she is pitched in a way that is effective for her to follow.
So good.
This one is, we're kind of looking at another one of these like fake large steps, but this is pretty dramatic. So, and this one is also cool because she is taking this connection that she has. So she's facing initially sideways to him, right? So the right side of her body is facing Maxence. And now she is coming around. She's swinging around and pulling the right hip and the right shoulder back. And you can see she's on bent legs while she's coming around, right? So she has bent legs here. And then she goes into a position with this left foot where she goes slightly behind, and then she's straightening as she's moving that right foot forward. So she's still keeping her balance, and she's not actually pressing through. So a lot of times when we see these straight legs, we start on the straight legs and then we press out of the straight legs. And that's not what we're doing here. And so that's why it's fine. Like she's placing the heel, and then as she's moving forward, she's slightly pressing out of it. But not so much that she's just like shooting herself forward. So you can see that she's then doing this fake step where her foot is reaching way out in front of her, but then coming way back underneath so that she's staying in a position where she has connection.
And she's also keeping her right toes very close to the floor. So she's not doing like a hi-ya kick and then touch.
Yeah. And that's what is part of the illusion, is that because she has her feet grazing the floor, it's hard to tell. Like you can see the amount of space between foot to foot, but then once things kind of keep moving, it's hard. You don't really notice it that she pulls it back in. This one you can really see though that she pulls it way back in.
Yeah, but also she's like rotating back to her right as she pulls it in, which helps cover the fact that she's pulling it in, that shaping. Science. And for those of you who don't know, Virginie, I believe, is 5'11", so understanding how to make sure she's not overstepping and getting ahead of her leader is like really important skill for her, which explains why I have studied her endlessly. Virginie, if you ever see this, I can't wait to work with you in person. Okay, thanks, bye. Okay, so we move into this awesome kind of like reverse shadow position where Virginie is behind Maxence's back. And I just wanted to highlight how clear Maxence is about striking the foot and then stepping over it. And they're having very much like a sway kind of situation going on that's making the weight transfers even clearer. And because she is connected to his ribs, like he's placing her hand on his lower ribs, he's making sure that his weight transfers, the way he's committing weight, is translating all the way up that far into his body, if not farther. So like if his ribs weren't going anywhere and only his hips were, he was that dissociative, she would not be able to feel it through the connection. So he's just making sure that his weight transfers are really clear to her through the connection point.
So this is another example of these fake large steps. But then there's another element that we kind of touched on in this last one, which is the rotation aspect. So because of the momentum that she has from where she's coming from initially, it wouldn't be ideal for her to stop, but she also doesn't necessarily want to continue that momentum forward towards Maxence, because then she's getting ahead of her lead once again, as we've talked about. So what she does instead is she does her kick out to pull in, but then she's rotating to her right this whole time. So she's keeping some momentum happening, but it's not momentum that's going directly towards Maxence.
Yeah, these kind of hammerlock coasters are really hard to manage distance with, because you want to make sure you're not actually doing the wrestling move. Priority number one. You want your follow's shoulder to be perfectly safe. So that's detail number one. And then once it is in that hammerlocked position, you want to make sure that the back of the follow's hand is either touching the back of their hip, or if they have really short arms for some reason, the back of their ribs. So that way it's a structural point. So that way, as a leader, when you then apply energy in this direction, you're talking directly to a structural point in the follow's torso. So likely the hip, for most people. And managing that distance is hard. So yeah, I would say they're just a little bit
off.
too far away from each other. And all he would have had to have done is this foot right here where he's placing his right foot. Um, if he had had that foot more here or a little bit further back instead of crossing in front so much, that would have solved that problem.
Mm-hmm.
They have just a tiny bit too much equal and opposite energy for trading places for a hammerlock.
Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that because she does get a little bit ahead of herself. She kind of falls forward a little bit almost. But I think it's just because of Maxence kind of already bringing her forward because he's kind of at the end of his rope.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much her. So I just
Yeah.
wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Like there are ways that she could have adjusted differently as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's already like she's taking her left arm up and over and really back through to kind of get herself a little bit more rope. So she's using rotation to do it.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to see because the handhold is literally behind them, but it does look like he's extending it far down enough for her based on how straight his arm is right here. Yeah. But it's really important before going into the up part of a hammerlock, the fellow's arm gets to be straight down. Yeah. Lots of things that could be tweaked. Mm-hmm. I remember having a thought that the starting frame I picked for this one was fun. So this is a really quick redirect. So unlike the instance earlier where we were talking about they hit the end of the rope too fast, too hard for a normal anchor, and then they both adjusted. This is one where Maxence is purposely going really fast and hard on the connection so that way he can redirect her really quickly. And there are a couple of things that he is doing to facilitate this. So the first is stepping across himself with his right foot, forward and across. And the other is using really intense contra body. So he's pulling his right shoulder back and he's using his arm to really counterbalance the chain. He's using that contra body to cushion into end range of motion, basically. Because there's a point at which we would wring out Maxence's innards if he were to rotate any further. So he's using his muscles to have a stopping point. Yeah, you're welcome. He's using the muscles in his abdomen to make sure he has a stopping point for how much contra he can make. And that's a lot of core work. So a lot of the times it's interesting because a lot of beginner dancers, regardless of the type of dance, get taught to like engage your muscles and that kind of thing. But oftentimes it's not spoken to accurately enough or nuanced enough. Like we don't want you to like be posing for a muscle picture in 2 seconds. Like you don't want to fatigue your muscles just existing. So I like engaged, meaning like at the ready, but relaxed. And understanding where your end ranges of motion are so you can activate your muscles ahead of time so you can resist into that end range of motion and stop there, as opposed to hitting your end range of motion going, oh no, what have I done? Engaging then, but because of physics, going past that end range of motion because you didn't resist it soon enough. And so this is one of those times where as a leader, Maxence is using the force of his abs to help redirect Virginie really quickly. It's not simply the footwork, but it's the contra body. And you can see how he twists to the right and then he twists back to the left. And he's using that forward check to help brace himself. I'm getting an ab workout just looking at that. Okay. Nobody have any nightmares of Maxence being disemboweled? Yeah.
Can we go back? Because I also had something about Virginie.
Yeah.
Because I think that my note was.
Oh yeah, sorry. I missed the arrow. I got too excited about being embarrassed for some of the Powell related jokes I was making.
So, what I wanted to know was about what Virginie is doing in terms of connection wise. Like, you can clearly see that she has that left foot planted and she's not moving it anywhere, even though you can clearly see that her shoulders keep moving back. And that's the important part, right? So she has that one foot planted, but with the rest of her body, she's continuing back in order to really search for the end of that rope. I love that she also like tucks her chin.
Yeah.
That is not necessary, but
and then I also want to add just to highlight it, how they're not just a handshake hold, it's grabbing each other's wrists. So a little bit of a deeper handshake hold, which just shortens the rope. That's all it does, and it makes it a little bit stronger. And when you want a redirect that is that fast, and both of you have long limbs, this handhold can be helpful. Because if you were to just shift it out to an actual handshake hold, that would be just enough rope that you would have to use even more muscle tension in order to redirect.
Yeah. So taking a look again at what Virginie is doing, so this is kind of what I was talking about with the shaping and the positioning. So what she's doing is very interesting because as she's going through this, she has the right shoulder, right hip actually kind of moving towards Maxence. But that's not what she wants to convey to him. She wants him to know that she's still moving away because she's about to kind of turn the corner and like hit that really solid connection. She's still connected when she is in this shaping towards him, but it's not it increases in intensity when she kind of rounds the corner. So really what she's doing is allowing herself, even though she has the right side of her body moving towards Maxence, she's kind of like allowing herself to fall away from him, right? So thinking of like backing down almost with that hip, with the left side. And so this is a good example of what I was saying about like she has one side going one way, but because of the positioning that she's in, she has to make sure that she's letting that direction be very clear with the hip going down and back. And then when she comes through, we have this rotational piece, which is what allows her to stay back. Because really, and this is partially how Maxence is leading it, but really coming out of this, generally, you're going to want to step forward into it if you're getting kind of led. Even like when you're just getting kind of unwound, you're still going to want to step forward, but because she is leaning away from him initially, like you can see that her hip is kind of still going back and down as she is rotating around towards him. She's able to, instead of move forward towards him, she's able to just continue rotating into her arm.
And as she's rotating into her arm, I just want to highlight that her shoulder is getting like an inch or two further away from Maxence.
Yeah. And that's the important part, is that that side of her body is moving away from him to get that tension. And then she actually, rather than like, how do I explain? She kind of like lets the rotation pull that left side forward and then lets it follow through with the arm swing. So she's not really like intentionally placing anything necessarily. She's just kind of letting it follow through.
Yeah, her arm is a result of the body, not something she's consciously, oh, I want this arm to do this.
Right.
Right.
So that's that one.
All right. I want to talk about this redirect right there. Because I feel like relaxing your neck back that far is optional.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can't do that. The lead for Virginie to be stepping towards the audience happens a hair sooner than I feel like a lot of leaders would see when trying to replicate this pattern on their own. It happens with this weight transfer onto the left foot and the settle here. So you can see his left foot is striking the floor. He's grounding down into that foot. So even though his torso isn't getting all the way up and over that foot, his intention is towards that foot and grounding weight into that foot. And that's actually, you can see she is already being redirected. And as he is grounded into that foot and partially weight transferred over it, he's able to lift up his right foot, extend it, and then as he's basically falling, just give an extra little bit of push from that left foot to lunge over to the right really quickly. And I feel like what happens a lot is leaders think that it's the lunge to the right that leads that, but it's not. It's the weight transfer and grounding beforehand onto the left foot. So at file speed, you can see him really go down right there. His body is doing this like swoop thing.
Yep.
And it's that swoop that's actually leading Virginie to be redirected. And then his lunge in the opposite direction is just a follow through on that.
Yeah. We have this kind of split weight moment again for Virginie. But I wanted to point out that, so she has the right arm extended and she's in split weight. And what she does is it's kind of like a more subtle version of what we looked at earlier, where she's tucking the right arm back and down in terms of like the shoulder area. And then she's shifting the weight at the same time onto the left foot to free up the right foot. And then as she's allowing that right foot to come forward, she allows the upper right side of her body to come forward as well.
All right, so here's a really beautiful commitment of weight, but on one foot. And what Maxence is doing is he's committing his weight in such a way into that standing left foot that it's still posting and redirecting Virginie. And the way he's able to do that is he hits the end of the rope here when he's in plie in his knees a little bit. And then as he is stepping into that foot or straightening that leg, his center is shifting ever so slightly to his right. And that's what's leading Virginie forward. And the lifting and extending of his right leg is also helping send weight to his right. And so it's not necessarily the yeetiest of yeets, but he is giving her a directional lead. It's just a soft one, which allows her more room to decide what to do. But it's still there. He's not just like, oh, here I am, balance on one foot. And she's like, well, what the hell do I do? And she makes something up. He's still leading her.
Great explanation.
Raise your hands if you've been there. It's a follow.
Yeah. this one's a little bit different because now we're looking at the like multiple steps that she takes kind of almost in place in order to keep moving, but also stay pitched back. And with this, it's kind of also to change into a pitch back. She's kind of pitching forward right here initially. And so then she places the right foot in front of her and kind of leans away. And that's what kind of switches the pitch. But at the same time, she kind of has a couple extra steps to keep it moving. Because that's a lot of momentum from that. I don't even know what she's swinging around from. Her swinging around is a lot of momentum to just like stop.
Let's find out.
Yeah, it's a lot of momentum. So she can't just stop and then change the pitch. That's not going to work. She has to really keep that momentum going, which is why she kind of has a little bit of a double step with the foot.
Mm-hmm. And like, this is another one of those, like we see follows trying to emulate the syncopation, but they're doing the syncopation arbitrarily to do the syncopation. It isn't based in functionality and technique. Like she's syncopating for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really common one that I see is the syncopation.
Yeah. Ooh, all right. This is a really interesting one. So what we see when we look at this is Maxence is going in a great big circle around Virginie. What she's feeling, however, is linear redirections. So as he's lifting his left leg up and around for this great big ronde, and he's extending it way out ahead of him and counterbalancing back with his upper body. When he resolves that motion and stands up and brings his right elbow towards him, Virginie is getting just as much that lead as there is rotational. Mm-hmm. So it's much more linear for her than it looks like based on what he's doing. And oh man, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear a leader, even the leaders that I love going like, "Ooh, I saw Maxence do this thing. I want to try it." You can hear the Wilhelm scream coming.
Yeah.
And it's often because leaders will miss that detail that's a linear redirect right there. And instead they will just yeet the follow out of orbit rotationally.
Yes.
So while Maxence himself is doing a really rotational orbital kind of movement, the way he's translating that commitment of weight through this closed connection is linear for her. And that is a really important detail.
Very. Yeah. Hearing somebody say, "Oh, I saw Maxence do this thing and I want to try it," is always very concerning for me.
It's quite terrifying.
If you want to do something Maxence does, learn it from Maxence.
Yeah. Yes.
I feel like just for
so
most
many
people,
yeses. Yes.
That's the best way to go. So, yeah, we're looking at Virginie's now adding in multiple things at once again. So we have shaping here initially, which is kind of what we looked at before, where she has the right shoulder, right hip kind of towards Maxence. And we're getting into this rotation because she needs to come around because she's getting diagonal to him. And then we also have the like extra steps in place. So like, I don't think I need to break it down anymore because I think we've talked about all of these pieces so far. But I just wanted to point out that we have that shaping. So the positioning is important of the body in terms of where she is putting the weight. She's again dropping that weight back and down with the left side of the hip. And then we have that double step too. And it's not necessarily like double step, there's just multiple steps. I'm just saying double step because there's more than one.
Yeah.
She's doing quite a few little steps in order to continue that movement, but then not get too ahead of herself.
Yeah.
Which is especially important because she has some like rotational energy happening with the upper body because she's doing quite a bit of like swerving back and forth. I don't know how else to explain that. Yeah, it's like a little bit of swimming back and forth with the upper body. And so it's really important for her to be able to like reset, calm down, and let the lower body catch up.
It's like she has taken the sailor shuffle and made it really posh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Posh isn't really elegant, really, really nice. Like, yeah. Anyways. The things that come to my mind, right? And then out the other end of the sugar push, I just wanted to highlight the way Maxence is bracing against her, even though he's traveling towards her. So she's moving backwards because he's led her out of the compression part of the sugar push. And basically he's changing from a forward pitch to a backward pitch to brace against that.
Yeah.
So even though he's traveling this way, his weight is committed that way. Right. That's enough for fun. All right. A lot of times in this dance, Maxence anchors like this with a bit of a booty pop action. And I just wanted to highlight it because a lot of people who tend to try to mimic this kind of styling do it without actually affecting the connection. So the first part that's really important to, we'll call the booty hitch. Yes, because it's basically a hitch step, right? But this one has more of a booty pop.
Booty hitch.
The booty hitch. Now I want to hear him say that in his beautiful accent. Story time. I remember once Phoenix Gray came back from Swing Diego years and years ago, and I wasn't able to go that time. And he's like, I took a workshop from Maxence, and he taught us the river sweep. And apparently in the class, nobody understood what he was trying to say. And I'm like,
yep.
Reverse whip. Is that not obvious?
Yep.
River sweep. Because it sounds like river sweep, apparently, to those untrained in the French accent. And I love that story.
River sweep. So good. I've heard that story so many times, and it's still funny.
So good. And of course, Phoenix Gray tells it the best because it's his story. So ask away. So to make this happen, Maxence is really doing a pretty intense resisted release. You can see how activated his muscles and his arms are. So as he is moving back away from Virginie and extending his arm, even though he's extending his arm, he is resisting that motion. So there's a lot of tension going on. And then it's like this magical moment where you can both visually see and feel through the connection that the follow has hit the end of their rope. That's when you can do the booty pop and make sure it encourages a hitch timing on the other side. And then the follow does their own hitch timing. It's, but it's not, this one isn't quite like a double resistance where you're compressing into the hitch. It's more of a sudden increase in tension. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm.
But he's not doing that independent of the connection. That's the most important part. He is committing weight into the booty pop. Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
My note was actually also on that.
You
So I just wanted to mention, because I was saying that Virginie does a really good job of adjusting. As we've seen, she does so many different things in her anchors in order to stay behind the lead and whatnot. This is an example where she doesn't really do that, though. And I think it's partially because of, like you were saying, what Maxence is doing, and they're just kind of moving away from each other, whatever. But I just wanted to give an example of her not really adjusting in this one. So you can kind of see she hits that end and then kind of falls forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so she doesn't have the chance like she normally does to extend that right leg out really far in front of her. She just steps directly onto it because she's falling forward.
Yep. And I would say, yeah, it's because of the connection and the hitch timing, because it's 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So where she taps her right foot in right here, that's 1 and 2.
Yeah. And I think they just get ever so slightly too far away from each other.
Yeah.
Because if they were a little bit closer, it would have been fine.
Mm-hmm. And it's so natural when your partner is pitched forward like this to want to mirror it. That's not just a visual thing, but you can feel there's a distinction in the connection. So
yeah,
yeah, they're matching each other well, so it's fine. We are so close to the end, people. We're getting there. We will get through every single one. We're so close.
Yep.
All right, next.
So this one, I just wanted to look at how much she really tucks that shoulder back, because this is a different arm that she has connected.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's doing it in the same way, just a different arm. But she really makes sure that she is like almost rotating the chest into the arm. Almost, not quite. But she's really, that shoulder's really tucking back.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all for that one.
All right, cool. On a roll. 4 left. Oh yeah. So I want to talk about this body lead right here. So this is another place where it's very common to arm lead, because you're not actually committing your weight properly as a leader.
Yeah.
So I want everyone to pay attention to Maxence's whole upper body, from his hips to his shoulders, and how as he's moving back onto this left foot, even though his whole body doesn't get over it, his body is still committing in that direction. And while his right foot is up in the air and moving to its next foot strike, that's when she's actually being redirected. And then the only thing the arm is doing is helping track her body. So she's stepping kind of and cross herself to her right just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But the arm is just mostly an accessory to what the body is doing, how he's committing his weight in the direction he wants her to go.
Yep. So I wanted to note how she is balancing this, because a lot of times seeing follows do this and try and kind of imitate the way that she does this. I see them falling forward out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because you can really see she is not only keeping her leg pretty soft until she is moving forward intentionally. So the standing leg is staying pretty soft. And then she's keeping a toe on the ground of that other foot. And so she has that extra balance point. So she doesn't really need to be going anywhere. But the last thing is that she's really reaching that free arm and extending it back, right? So she's at this angle, and you can see she's pitching forward, but she's not falling out of it because she has so many different things adjusting, right? So she has that soft knee, she has the extra toe on the floor, and then she has that arm reaching back behind her. So even though she's pitching forward towards Maxence, it doesn't really matter because of the extra things she has going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's really not taking that full step forward until he's wanting her to, because she's just kind of letting that toe glide along ground until he brings her forward onto it. So with this one, it's just, can you like go through the stylings that she does? You know, so she has some like body isolation things that she does out of it. And then, but the important part is she's ending pitched back, right? So she's ending in a way where her knees and lower body are kind of tucked in front of the upper body. And you can really see that with like the hips. She kind of sets it back and tucks them under a little bit when she pops that knee. And you can also see at the same time that right shoulder sets back. So we're ending this pitched back, and that's why she's good to go for the next piece.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, this is my last one, but we have another example of where she's taking multiple steps in place and then faking a large step.
Sneaky.
Mm-hmm. And the way that she does these like extra steps is she's making sure that her knees aren't locking out, right? She's very intentionally staying with some soft knees. Like she's going through the motions where she's straightening them some, but she's not fully straightening the leg, and she's not like locking anything out. It's just enough so that she's able to kind of keep her balance. And the soft knees helps that because she's also pitched a little bit forward initially. But the extra steps help her get it so that her feet are not behind her, but like under her or ever so slightly in front of her. And that really dramatically changes things. Like it doesn't have to be a huge positional difference, but just like slight change makes a big difference in terms of like how much you're able to hang back.
Mm-hmm.
And then she also does that fake large step out of it again. And this is another one where you can see she really does pull it quite a ways back. So she's not stepping on it and like getting ahead of the lead.
Mm-hmm. All right, last one. We've made it. So this is another example of Maxence hitting the end of the rope a little too fast, too hard, and then adjusting to compensate. So Virginie has hit this really lovely power pose while he is rotating past her. She like hits split weight here and then decides to stay there and shape towards him. And as he comes around to face her, first of all, he is spotting. So his head faces her before his body does, so he can get a visual lock on what she's doing. And because of the power pose, he knows he needs to be much more attentive to the connection, so that way he doesn't arbitrarily like yank her out of that position.
Yeah.
And so what he actually ends up doing is he allows his momentum to continue with his body and his feet, but he lets his shoulder extend a little bit more than he would most of the time. So he's compensating for this situation in his shoulder, but he's not releasing it. He's resisting into that position. So it may look overextended, but because the handhold is moving and traveling with the shoulder, that's what tells me that it's actually connected. So, but he is taking one for the team in his shoulder, just ever so slightly, to not yank her out of that position. That was a lot.
But not too much.
Woohoo!
Do we want to do a little recap of the question for the episode?
Sure. Why don't you start? I'll have some water because I've been holding the screen share thing forever.
So our question was, how do I position myself so that my partner can feel my weight change? And like Cassie was talking about, having that tension or compression and including the weight of your body and then the intention of direction. And I was also talking about for follows specifically, and I mean for leads as well, but I think follows are the ones that tend to do more shaping and things. If you're doing shaping, you also have to be careful of the positioning of the body to make sure that you are sending the correct message of where you want your lead to know where your weight is, right? So we were looking at those examples of Virginie having the right side leaning in towards Maxence, but we want the weight to be going this way. So having that specific positioning, you have to be careful about that.
Yeah. Awesome. I think you covered it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have not finished scheduling August yet. However, we do know we're going to be having our next guest host at the end of August. Yeah, we're going to be having the one, the only Sarah Van Drake. Very, very excited. Can't wait.
Yes, and she was very excited.
Yes.
We asked her.
Yes, I'm so excited. So look forward to that. And sometime probably towards the end of next week, I'll have the list of the schedule for August. So our 2 free episodes, including the one with Sarah, and our next What Went Wrong workshop. Thank you all for joining us. We will see you next time. Alicia sent me a note earlier being like, are we going to actually like do notes beforehand, or are we just going to go through the whole thing? And I said, notes are good. And then looking at our notes, we're basically going through the whole thing. So answer is
that's why
yes.
I was like, so are we doing notes? And then I followed up that message later with a message being like, so I have a lot of notes.
I want to talk about this and this and this and this and this. And so this is our life now. Pretty simple. That's all I wanted to say there. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I have no clue what you were talking about.
Oh, is it not showing?
No, I had to get up.
Oh, I did not notice. I was so in. We will move on.
You'll see it when you
yeah, when I edit tomorrow. I'm very excited. Was it Coco?
There was barking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.